I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago.
Hey y'all, and welcome to my channel. Welcome to another chapter of Adventura the Bus. This is chapter 18. She gets a new look. And so I have been out working on my bus this past week. And one of the projects I've been working on is the doors for the bus. And you're finally going to get to see what the doors look like. So if you stick around to the end of the chapter, you'll get to see exactly what that looks like. They're in here in my studio drying. And I'm actually here in my art studio right now. And I am I'm out here because it is a control environment as far as temperature is concerned. So because of that, I have these out here and they're curing. The epoxy is curing right now to finish it up and get it to where it's finished. And so I will show you at the end of the chapter what they look like. Hopefully in the next week, I will get them back on the bus and hanged. Well, I probably could hang them up today, but I don't want to risk messing up the finish. So it's best for me to let these sit for at least 8 hours and then they will be done. So thank you for stopping by my channel. I hope you enjoy this journey of me finishing up these doors and getting them in a place where they're completely finished and done and looking the way I wanted them to look. And just I've put the finishing touches on them. The only thing I could add to them now at this point is maybe some trim work, and that's about it. But they're looking fantastic. I hope you enjoy the journey. Okay, so what you see me doing here is preparing the door for the epoxy. I'm working on the back side of the door and I am sealing it with caulk. And this is clear coated caulk, so it will dry clear. And I sealed up all the cracks in the seams in the door so that when I poured the epoxy, there would be no way to leak the epoxy through the cracks. Epoxy is much like water. It will seek the lowest possible point and just leak through that point. This actually ended up being a great strategy. Originally I was building a mold out of styrofoam, but that did not seem to be looking real good and working real good, and I got the idea to do this, and this was a genius idea. It worked out really well. I was mostly pouring the epoxy in that bottom panel, and part of the reason for the epoxy was to strengthen the door. The door is pretty flimsy without the epoxy, and now that it has the epoxy on it on both sides, which you get to see at the end of the video, now that it has epoxy on both sides, I am able to basically have a very strong and stable door now. And I'm very happy with this. What you're seeing me do here is I'm trying to level the surfaces, because the more level it is, the better it is for the epoxy to flow. And if it's all crooked, you're going to epoxy puddling in certain spots, and so that was something I was trying to avoid there. So this took me a minute to get it level, but I did finally get it set to the right level, both directions, and it worked out really well for me. And I'm going to go into some description of what I'm going to be doing next. I did sand down and prep this, but I did not get the actual first pour on video, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the next segment here. And so you can see me getting that finished up, getting them level so that I could get ready for the first pour. It is a beautiful day here in North Carolina. It's a fall day, but you don't see very many leaves because I did a lot of work yesterday on the yard. I took some time out to do the yard and get rid of some of the leaves. I waited till most of the leaves had fallen so that I could get it to be done right and make it look good. I have some projects I've been working on, and one of them is my doors. I have to do the epoxy on the doors. So I put some sealant on them yesterday and cleaned them up and got them ready so that I can start doing the epoxy coat today. I have some epoxy right now, and the good Lord has blessed me with a few days of awesome weather. I have temperatures that are going to be in the 80s or high 70s, low 80s, and that's perfect for me doing the epoxy coat. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to put on a thin layer of the kind of first coat of epoxy on them right now, and then I'll let them cure while I work on some other things. And that's kind of what I did yesterday. I put down some caulking to seal up the cracks, and then I'm gonna do the epoxy coat. And then after I do that first epoxy coat, then we'll do a little bit of a pour on the doors to get them sealed really well. So I'll show you a little bit of that, and I also worked on some stuff in the van, so I'll give you a quick little sneak peek of that. So here's the doors. They've been curing overnight. I have let them dry up in the sun, and you can see that there's stuff in these cracks, because with water and with epoxy, it will seek out the lowest point, and it will seek out a place to go where it can leak through. And so it's best to get it sealed as tight as possible so that it won't go through the cracks. And so that's what I did yesterday. I sealed it on both sides. So I'm ready to start doing the first coat of epoxy on them. I'm going to do the outsides of the doors first, and then I'll do the insides. Okay, so what you see me doing here is my daughter gave me her husband's old cell phone, which has a pretty good camera on it, so I was able to finally get some good time-lapse video here. So I was using his phone for that, and then I was using the GoPro, which you see set up there, for the up-close and personal stuff. And so you'll get a little bit of repeated footage here, but what I'm doing here is sanding it down and prepping it to make it ready for that first coat of epoxy. I wanted to make sure that everything was sanded down and all the dust was cleared up before I actually poured the epoxy. So I just wanted to make sure I had a lot of smooth edges and didn't have spots that were irregular, and because once I pour the epoxy on, that's it. There's no more. And so I wanted to clean it up and sand it just a little bit before I did that, and that got done, and that's what I'm doing there, is prepping the surfaces for the first coat of epoxy. So that sanding takes just a few minutes, and then I will move on to the next task. Oh, what a beautiful day. Yes, I'm off to another good start to the day. Today I am going to try and work on the epoxy stuff. I apologize in advance because I already poured some of the epoxy stuff, thought the camera was running, it was not. So I'm going to try and make sure the camera is running today when I do the epoxy work. I have a short day today, so I have to get busy right now. So blessings to y'all. I hope you enjoy the journey. I'm almost back down and run up to my trash cans, which is a little hike on Thursday because I have to put my trash cans at the curb. Okay, so what you see me doing here is working with the sander, and I'm starting with a very coarse grade paper because you can see all that pitting there. That's kind of how the epoxy dries. And then I've worked down to a very fine grade paper, and now I'm doing the finishing touches on the sanding here. So you'll see this angle, and then you'll see me set it up for actually where I've done the pour, but unfortunately I didn't catch it on camera again because my battery went dead. And now I'm setting it up again to do some more pouring, and so you're seeing me set the doors up. You'll see me set both the doors up on this. They had been drying for a while because I had some good weather, and but this day that I'm doing this dry pouring here, it wasn't as nice a weather, and I was hoping to get it in and have it dry outside, but unfortunately the temperature did not get high enough that day for me to get it dry outside, so I ended up having to move them later, which you'll see that. So I take the hardware off because I don't want to get epoxy on that, and I'll go ahead and start sanding down this coat to go into the next coat, which would be the third coat. And hopefully, at that point I wasn't sure if it was going to be the final coat, but it did work out to be that third coat was the charm. So 3 times are the charm, and I'll actually go down and this is the second coat. I'm actually sanding down the second coat, and I'll start with a coarse paper, not as coarse as the first time because I've already got it smoother than the first coat. So I go through and do all this prep work so that I can have it ready for the next thing, epoxy. Unfortunately, my battery keeps dying on me on my camera, and I did not capture the pour again, so you'll see me move straight into moving the doors inside. This is because it was too cold outside for the epoxy to cure properly, and so I had to put it inside the bus and set up a heater in there to get it
warm enough to be able to dry. At that time I didn't have the space in my studio, and I had the space inside the bus, so I wanted to do that. This is the next day. I've now finished the first side, and I'm beginning to prep the second side. And what you're seeing me do is clean up all the epoxy that has bled through the doors. There wasn't a lot of it, but there was just little bits and pieces that I needed to clean up before I actually did the next level of epoxy. So I'll go through and sand everything down a little bit just to make sure it's good and smooth, because you don't want to seal it with a bunch of irregularities in it, because once you put that epoxy on, it's sealed for life. It's kind of like Jurassic Park, where the little bug was stuck in the piece of amber. Once you get that in there, it's done. And even with the epoxy, when it's curing, it's better to have it inside where there's not a bunch of bugs or leaves blowing around like in the fall. So that's another reason I started putting the doors inside after I poured it, because there was just too much debris. For whatever reason, I have a lot of honeybees around this year. I don't know quite why, but there's just a lot of honeybees around at this time of year right now. I think somebody's got a hive nearby that didn't have one before, and so I have a lot of honeybees flying around, and I don't want to damage them, but I've unfortunately had a couple honeybees land in the epoxy, and that's just not something I can save them from. Once you get epoxy on their wings, they can't fly anymore, and you might as well just see them out of their misery. So please don't be a hater for me that a couple of honeybees were lost on this project. I try my best not to do that. And so I'm cleaning up the crevices of the doors, and I think you'll see another angle here because my daughter gave me her husband's old phone, and it had time-lapse photography on it, so that was much better. And this is where I actually captured the pour. So this is one of the pours. I put in the first layer of color. I was actually going to try and do some clear coat, but I decided to do all color on this layer. And then what I did is one layer of color, and then 2 layers of clear coat on top of that. So the first layer is going to lay in the color, and then the second one would be second and third coats are just for strength and clear coat and smoothing out the finish. And so that's what I did. And this is the you're seeing me work with a small chip brush. You have to be careful with that because they do tend to lose hairs on the brush, and you have to end up picking the hairs out of the epoxy. Anything that gets left behind is in permanently, like I said. I'm using also a heat gun. This is another view of the actual pour. I had 2 cameras running, so I actually got some good footage on this here. And you see the beautiful color that I got going on that first coat. And I absolutely love the way it turned out, and very happy with the results of this pour on both sides of the door. And now the door is strengthened so much more. Both doors are really strong now and sturdy, which they were a little bit flimsy by the way I had them put together before, but now they are so strong and so solid. And I have 2 solid doors now, and I'm very, very happy with the results. And you will see them at the end of the video. I'll show you what they look like. They're still in the drying process, so I still have one more 8-hour cure on the last coat of epoxy that I did. But they're very close to being finished. Unfortunately, I did not get them finished before the end of this video, but they are looking good, and this really was a good process. It took about, if you figure I had to prep it and then let it dry, and then I had to put the first coat on and let it dry, and then I had to put the second coat on and let it dry, and then the third coat and let it dry. It's taken about a week to do this whole process, and I still have my last coat drying in my shed, and even after that I have to still probably just sand it down slightly and smooth the finish out. I don't know, it's going to depend on how it dries. And so I might even just do a little bit more epoxy and smooth it out, but that I can do without having to have it laying flat. It's best to have it laying flat when it's drying, because then you get a nice, smooth finish on it, especially when you have enough epoxy on. You want to do it in layers, because if you don't do it in layers, it will overheat and crack, And that's something I learned with the big table that you'll see later on in the end of the video. Is you will see my larger piece that I have that I'm going to be using for a countertop in the bus. That's kind of why I went with this blue theme in the doors, because the countertop already has blue in it, and I already have a poured river table countertop for inside the bus, and it has a flaw in it because of the fact that we poured too much epoxy at once. And so you want to pour it in layers. You pour the first layer down, then the second layer, then the third layer, and you have to be really patient with this process. It's very involved, but it is worth the journey to go on. So you see me just cleaning up some spots there and smoothing out the surface as much as possible.
Well, thank you for stopping by this channel, and thank you for going all the way through to the end of this video. Now I will give you a peek of what the doors look like. So this is how they look right now, currently. They're in the drying state right now, but I will have, hopefully in the next few days, have them up on the bus and installed and in place. But I'm really happy with the results of how they look. Please excuse my studio. It's a little bit in transition. And that is also a sneak peek of something you're going to get to see in the future too. This is a table I worked on a while ago, and that's going to be my countertop for in the bus. So that's why we're going with the blue theme on the doors. They were carrying out that blue theme on the bus with the doors, and I'm really, really happy with the way this looks. It's come out quite beautiful, and I am very happy with the finish. And I hope you have enjoyed this journey. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the chapter. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, subscribe, and share my video.
Thank you all for taking time to stop by. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Y'all come back now.
Some things are not the same as they were a year ago.